Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Original Condition podcast. I am Dave Gardner, and I am here today with Jaydon Meidlinger, who is a next level human being who I had the pleasure of spending a weekend with a week or two ago. And him and his family are currently based out in Mpumalanga on a farm. And yeah, it was one of the most inspiring weekends of my life, I must be very honest. Seeing what Jaydon and Dita have done and are doing, and their plans and dreams and visions is a glimmer of hope in amidst the apocalypse that we are currently facing, and feel is a very honest, real, at least a part of an honest and real solution to the issues we face, the dilemmas, the contradictions that we feel as modern human beings, consuming and just, this kind of strange situation we find ourselves in with regards to, being completely reliant on external systems for electricity, for food, for transport, for our jobs, our education. And it's not to say that all those things are bad and wrong and terrible, but there are other ways, and there are ways that are sustainable, and there are ways that are productive and creative, and I think healthier, and encourage a sense of communion, communication, community. And it does sound like we're talking about a hippie cult, and basically we are, but it's incredibly functional without the mass murderings, hopefully. But Jaydon, dude, thank you so much for joining me, and I'm really looking forward to this one.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on, and I'm really excited to speak to you and to get to know you a little bit more.
Totally.
Yeah, the weekend was really fun. I really appreciated you guys coming out and sharing some of your skills. Seeing David move was really awesome. And yeah, learning a lot from each other, I think.
Yeah, man, totally. And like, during this time where there's just been complete severance and separation for most people, to get together again was just such a simple reminder of, like, how cool it is to just be with other people and learn with other people.
For sure, and have fun.
Yeah.
I think that human connection is very special. It's been great for us to be out here and to be a family out here on the farm, and just spend time together without any real interference, which is very unusual in society. Like, I feel like every time we might have stepped away in the past, then it ends up being like this, oh, but I should be doing this, or I should be doing that. Whereas lockdown was just this, like, no holds barred, everyone go home, do whatever you want. It's like, what? Is this really happening?
Yeah, I hear you, man. Like, obligations. And all of a sudden there was this weird sense of freedom, which of course is different for everyone. Obviously, you guys got out to a space where you could
for sure
express that. But even still, being at home, even if you were living with other people, there's still a lot of things that you could dive into, man. Reading, writing, researching, cooking, taking care of things, doing, if you have the access to that kind of thing, online stuff. There was a lot of opportunity there. So maybe that's a nice place to start, is like, I know we spoke about it quite a bit, but for you, going out to the farm was somewhat of like an accelerating process for you. It kind of you kind of got stuck into things that you could really focus your attention on?
Well, I can talk a bit about our journey because it was just like a leading into that. So probably since 2000 and probably 2016 January, we moved out to a business partner's land. So I started a design business with a friend of mine, and him and his dad were my business partners. And his dad had this piece of land.
Just hold on, Jay. I'm
Pretoria.
losing you there.
So we
Just
went
hold
down
on.
this agreement where we save on travel.
Where we got caught in the matrix there.
Is it back?
I think we're back. Okay. I don't know if it was you or me, but so it kind of scrambled a bit when you were saying you and your friend started a business.
Yeah, we just started a
Sorry,
we
carry
started
on.
a design business. No, it's okay. And basically, yeah, we ended up staying on his father's land, and they were generous enough to allow us to be there for a time and to do some crazy stuff. So we erected a temporary structure, but it was rather a big temporary structure. So we kind of got caught up in that wormhole for about 3 or 2.5 years.
Wow.
And in 2.5 years, we built this double-story, 50 square meter little like cabin kind of thing, I guess. And so also during that time, we were slowly starting to get into permaculture and trying to understand how we could become sustainable. We were using that time as a platform kind of to still work and to generate income, but everywhere in our spare time, we were kind of like living, just making fires, for instance, like just cooking our food on fires for a couple of weeks, you know, and
Nice.
starting to get into composting toilets and like trying to figure out how to become a little bit more independent. Because before that, we had all these aspirations of being off the grid and independent and sustainable. But to actualize that from our kind of zero position coming out of suburbia in Pretoria, I mean, that's kind of what we're all dealt. We've got dealt these cards that we come out with in life, and then we have to make our way towards our dreams, I guess.
Sure.
And our understanding of the world.
Nice, man. So just a little bit of a background there. I didn't mention it. I mean, I'll write it in the bio, but you're an architect. You studied architecture. And
at the University of Pretoria. Yeah.
Okay. And that's kind of, would you say that's maybe one of the lenses that you perceive everything through, is kind of this understanding
Sure.
of foundations and fundamentals and design? And it's been so interesting getting, like, just reading a little bit more about permaculture, and obviously Eve is diving deeper into it. And this idea of like permaculture design and this kind of co-creative experience of understanding kind of like fundamental laws of nature and creating a structure or a garden or a space that kind of utilizes and makes the most of those existent forces. So yeah, like maybe just share a little bit about, because maybe seeing as though we're doing a bit of a timeline, it's like maybe go back a bit in terms of the architecture,
sure.
like what drew you to that and where you're at with it now.
Yeah, I finished my studies in 2011, and it was a nice course in the sense that I got in touch with design. Before studying architecture, I remember the kind of like introductory lecture that I was in, and they were talking about design, and I was like, wow, I've never really used that word or heard that word or like even considered that word. And obviously they were quite big on it. So it got very in my experience of the entire course, it taught me that design is a way to take knowledge, especially your knowledge base. Like what you know is what you can design with.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to grow that understanding, and that becomes your responsibility in life, is to understand things more and more in order to be able to work with those things and to use those kind of like understandings of natural laws and natural things. I mean, we all like to think that we're kind of above and beyond the forces of nature at this point, but far from it. I think, yeah, we kind of forget that the density of air has an impact on our existence, you know, like something small like that. But so yeah, that kind of put me in the sense of like, you have these kind of like tools within your intelligence to work with, and you have now natural materials and man-made materials and all of these physical things that then you can work with. And the kind of big thing that we can do within design is to coordinate those things well, to kind of like orchestrate things well, and to add value. I think that's at the end of the day, the biggest kind of thing that you can say about design is like, at the end of the day, you're trying to add value. And if you haven't done so, then it's a good reflection. Like, you can ask yourself that question at the end of a project, like, how much value did I add, and in what kind of format, and what kind of especially in permaculture, you can always ask yourself, could nature have done this better? And most of the time the answer is yes. But if you're in certain environments, the answer is definitely no. Like, if you're in the desert and you've created a forest, then you can say, no, nature would have taken a couple of 100,000 years to do this.
Sure.
So I think that's a good basis for simplifying design, because I think people inflate it quite a lot in terms of this like unnatural human power to put our will out onto the world. And yeah, so after architecture, then I moved into furniture design, because I felt like in the architecture course as well, I didn't get a sense of like real tangibles, like how does wood work? Like how do I join wood together? How do I cut steel? How do I use the current technologies to move things around? And yeah, so that kind of sent me on this course of like trying to get back to the grassroots of kind of structure and materials, and work my way from there. So then I did some time with a company called Draw Studios, doing furniture design. And then I moved over to that friend of mine with the steel manufacturing plant, and did some steel work, and understood all of these things, like in combination with all of the kind of like nuances, and like trying to pick up on those things in order to like grow my skills in terms of joining things together. And so that was kind of my architectural journey. And slowly it started to, eventually we started our own company, design and manufacture. But slowly it started to melt into this kind of idea of permaculture, and the outside kind of like extending outwards what people actually need. Architecture often deals with like kind of people's spatial needs in an indirect way. Like you build this building, this architect goes and retires 50 years later. After 100 years, people are still using that building for whatever purpose they see fit. It's not like the architect wrote in stone, like this is how you will use the building. So I love that organic nature of it. It always ends up being kind of like, appropriation of something that someone had this very idealistic kind of perspective on, and then all of a sudden people are using it for all these different things. And so I think there's a big part of architecture that doesn't deal with that in terms of like the post lifespan of an object,
Right.
and in its relation to the greater world, and never mind just the street that it's on, but the ecosystem that it is basing itself in.
Sure.
What was there and what will be, you know?
Yeah, that's a deep that's quite a deep thought. If you think about certain buildings that you've been in, like what the original intention was, and how it was built then, how it would be built now. And then for me, like my mind goes quite, because obviously I studied archaeology,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just like, we still don't exactly know, like why the pyramids were built. The ruins that you're surrounded by there in Mpumalanga, how exactly, did, like, what was the purpose, what was the intention? And it's a fascinating thought to have. Um, what would you say was like the main, like, why did you choose architecture?
Um, I can say I didn't really have much of a conscious movement around that. I was just young, and I thought I like math and I like art. How can
Okay.
those two things work together? And so architecture was one of the obvious kind of, yeah, it uses a lot of your analytical kind of skills, but also it
Mm,
has this artistic kind of input. And it ended up being such a beautiful choice because it was so vast. Like this, just it's connected to so many different issues. Like even just in terms of presenting your work to someone, you have to have some understanding of graphic design and like communication, like visual communication. And yeah, so I got to delve into all of these different fields and work with artists and work with yeah, different aspects of of the the kind of collective need of architecture in a way.
mm, mm. What is the,
So I like that.
sure, sure.
In archaeology, did you guys go out on field work and like do all
I,
that kind of stuff?
I, I I never worked on like a functioning dig, like a classical archaeological dig, but my focus was more the rock art.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, I mean, I've been going to sites since I was a kid, um, whether like, just visiting them, and then I've been to a few like functioning sites, but I never actually worked like on a dig, but I've been
that's cool.
with specialists to rock art sites, and like, analyzed and done some of that process. But um yeah, only really in because, and it was also the nature of it through UNISA, the undergrad, it's through correspondence. So only really in the
Mm.
postgrad course was there like a full on dig experience. So yeah.
I can imagine it's not very often that people get to experience that because from what I've been reading, that the bones don't really fossilize. I mean, I read some statistic that in the whole of North America, if everyone had to die at this moment, there would only be like 14 bones that would be preserved in the same way that dinosaur bones have been preserved,
Mm.
um, just statistically.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. In terms of human remains, that's quite a um, it's quite a rare thing. You know, that's why burials are so like, whoa,
Mm, mm.
because if something is mummified or buried, then um, it's most likely going to be preserved and then be
Yeah,
found.
I guess that's like natural preservation that I was talking about, not
Yeah.
like these. I mean, we're human; we would intentionally preserve in a way,
Mm,
which is
mm.
different. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, exactly. Nature just, I mean, the process just degrades,
Mm.
and what's the word? Decomposes, and
Mm.
so that's why burials and tombs and mummies and things like that are quite a big deal.
Yeah,
Um,
like nature's way are like mudslides and
yeah,
like
dude,
ocean bottoms and stuff that live off
fires
that.
and yeah. Um, okay, so then you guys started you finished, life happened, and there's a lot of interesting things that happened there in terms of, I don't know when you met Dieter.
Oh,
Um, And
So,
then,
so I started this journey, like, so architecture, and then probably like 3 years out of university we met. And I think Noah was conceived maybe like 5 years out of university.
okay.
So yeah, it's quite a steep timeline. I think I was like 25 when I became a father.
Wow.
And so that shaped things quite heavily. Just in the sense that all of a sudden, without any resources, I had to try and create the space for my family, my new family that just kind of like came into existence. So
Amazing.
that kind of sparked this whole need for a housing solution. So then we started talking about like, okay, where should we be? And Gauteng in itself is like this kind of very difficult thing because it's quite a small area with the 90% of South African's population or something
Yeah,
like that.
it's
Not
wild.
90%, but like a lot of the South African population. So yeah, we were in Johannesburg at Dieter's parents' house initially, and then we were like exploring and like going to see hundreds of houses and like trying to position ourselves in an advantageous way. It seems like looking back on it, like, oh, that must have been so difficult. But in a sense, it's so liberating to think when you're young, and if you have some kind of support structure, which we are very blessed to have, then you can kind of take these smaller risks when you're younger. Seems like as you get older, life kind of solidifies and you have to become much more calculated and responsible with your decisions. Not that taking a risk is irresponsible. I think that's one of the more responsible things you can do is to step out of your comfort zone and to try and push your boundaries. So yeah, that was kind of where we were in our thinking. And I just remembered this piece of land that my friend was on from when I was a kid. I used to go there when I was in high school and stuff. And we used to have like all this fun out there, like on motorcycles and all kinds of stuff. And so I like thought about that place and I thought, yeah, let me just ask them and let me just see what we can do. And they were totally open to it. I mean, it's one of those situations where nothing lost and nothing gained, or like if you ask, you will not receive. If you do not ask, you will not receive.
Sure.
Like you have to take those steps to trust that maybe people might like have some kind of desire to help or to do something out of the goodness of their hearts.
Sure.
And so we delve into that community. We moved out there in a camper van, so like a Volkswagen body that a camper van had been like built onto.
Oh, wow.
And so we drove out and parked there.
Old school, like,
yeah,
like, wow, amazing.
Jurgens,
I can picture it.
A Jurgens, probably like 1990s at earliest, probably 1980s model.
Wow.
Jurgens camper van.
Sure.
And so we parked it there and pitched a tent and started building on like no money at all. So like every month we would get like 12,000 Rand or 10,000 Rand to work with, and we'd spend it all and like it would be gone within minutes. And then we would build a little bit, and then so we made a kind of a deal with ourselves that whatever rent money we weren't spending would go straight into the construction. And so we built this house, and then about 2.5 years after we built that, it took about 2 years to finalize it and finish it. We'd been living in it from the beginning, like literally as soon as we built a platform, we were living on the platform between the camper van and the platform. And this is all with Noah when he was 1. So Noah's like 1 year old, moving into 2 years old. And we're just missioning, and he's growing up on a building site, and he's like walking on uneven ground, and like it's on a plot, there's snakes, there's all kinds of stuff going on. So we're like really basically camping for 2.5 years, like either outside or like in a house with no walls. Like that's kind of what our experience was of that. And it was nice. I really enjoyed it. I mean, we didn't feel unsafe at all. We were like mostly safe. I mean, we felt safe in Gauteng, which is, I think there's something to be said for that. Like the people have this sense of insecurity in South Africa. And to a large degree, it's the people that have something that are at risk.
Sure.
People that have nothing, I mean, there are those cases, and I'm not trying to generalize, but for us, we felt okay. We felt safe, and yeah, so it went for a couple of years until we did get robbed. The first day that we put locks on the doors
Well, there we go.
and left the house alone, it was like a December holiday, and we were actually at this farm, and we heard, oh, the house had been robbed, and so we went home, and everything was gone, like literally everything, like the kids' clothes, the gas cookers, and all of this stuff. And then like we started to replace stuff, and then 2 weeks later we went away for one day, and they stole everything again.
What? Dude.
So literally, like I could imagine this party of like all these kids in the field, and with pots on these gas cookers, and they were just like, it's an interesting thought, like a thief is like someone who steals something, right? The child of a thief doesn't know where that t-shirt or anything comes from.
No.
It's exactly the same as if their parents had to go and buy it. So the fact that all the kids' clothes were stolen kind of like put things into perspective of what these people needed. Like it wasn't an economic need. It was a real need.
Yeah.
So,
and
I can sympathize with that. You know what I mean? Like
sure.
I don't like being robbed, but
no.
We survived it, and I'm sure those people used whatever resource they took. So,
and it wasn't. I mean, they didn't like trash the place, or did they? Was there like what's the word I'm looking for?
They pulled all the drawers out and like turned the place upside down, for sure. And yeah, dealing with all of those emotions of arriving into your space and someone else has been in there, taking part in your things. I think that was more of a process than the actual stuff.
Yeah.
And so from that moment, I had the sense of like, oh man, like this space is not that safe, you know, like I don't feel, and that's a contrast from, I mean, we've been living without walls for quite a while. And then all of a sudden you have these feelings like, oh no, wait, man, I don't want to have this like kind of like hanging over my head in a way.
Sure.
Like all of these fears. I think that's kind of what it's good to try and put it in that sense. Like we were living in freedom without fear. And then all of a sudden this event brought fear into the lifestyle again. So I think that's quite a big factor in our lives. Is like we like to live outside, so living in fear just makes no sense for us. So it kind of like was a push factor towards now thinking of how to take the structure that we had built fixed on someone else's land and actually make it mobile, actually make it able to continue with us, because we had invested all these resources into this space, something like 200,000 Rand into building a space, and we could have potentially sold to them, to the people that we were living on their land, but in a sense, it was too much of an experiment. Like I really like built that place with the intention of taking it down, and so that kind of just motivated the process, got us to start taking it down. So then we started exactly the process in reverse that we had just been doing. A lot of this seems like wasted labor in a way. Like we spent all the time and effort like building the space and then taking it down again. Like literally like 4 years of like doing this.
Yeah, man. But it's so inspiring, man. And it's so humbling. It's so like this is such a rare thing. It really, really is. And you know, we talk about comfort zones and like, you know, the comforts of a civilized life, you know, and
let's say Western kind of
Western, exactly. And it's like, and you hear these stories, you know, you watch documentaries and videos and of people just doing these remarkable things all over the world in terms of alternative ways of living, that, you know, are generally more in line with you know, sustainability and just living a conscious life in communion with nature. And it's, I just keep reminding myself and other people, like, because I definitely was like a complete, you know, idealist and like romantic of like, you know, kind of like a, you know, Alexander Supertramp Into the Wild, you know, like, oh, you just go into nature and you just live, and it's like, yeah, but it's like, no, dude, it's serious hard work and focus, and
I
you're
think
gonna,
as a character, I mean, Alexander Supertramp, he was like on his own. And I think
yeah,
that was the complete difference for us, is that we weren't on our own. It was
yeah,
me and Stefani and the kids, and so, and our dogs. Like, you can't just get on a bicycle with all of that and head out into the woods.
sure, but this, just like this, I think this is where a lot of people, like the like kind of hippie vision gets like lost, you know, and people like just have these, oh, so you're just gonna like run away to an island or go live in the mountains or whatever, and it's like, no, like, and that's what is so inspiring, is seeing people like you who have like the hippie vision, but who know how to work hard and execute. And I think it's what you said earlier. I've said this pretty much in every podcast. Like, you really enjoyed math and you really enjoyed art, and you felt the importance of both and the connection of both, and like this ability to be very analytical and very pragmatic and very, like, you know, problem solving, and then this ability to completely go laterally and see it from a multitude of different perspectives, um, and then the combination of those two, which of course, when you look at certain aspects of mathematics, is incredibly artistic, and when you look at certain aspects of art, is incredibly mathematic and precise and technical. And so it's these, you know, these supposed opposites or polarities that actually work in perfect unison, really.
Yeah,
um
I mean, we've got the left hemisphere of the brain and the right hemisphere of the brain, and I think a lot of these formations within nature are exactly that, exactly for this cross-pollination, this edge effect, like where those two meet in this kind of unexpected, very dynamic way, creates something more than just whichever one would have. It's like one exists in order to like kind of tip the balance of the other.
Totally.
And I think that's very powerful, and we can, yeah, I can talk about that at length in terms of permaculture. But yeah, in terms of like living and trying to get ourselves into a balance with nature, I think that's been one of the biggest issues that we've had in society, is that we are completely left-brained,
Yeah.
and completely set on trying to quantify, control, kind of
Monetize.
monetize,
Yeah.
specifically
Yeah.
all of these like spiritually connected things. Like, a
Yeah.
lump of coal is not just a lump of coal, it is
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of years of the planet trying to balance itself,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's why it's underground, you know.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. So just to explore a little bit more, that's, and you mentioned it, like people say, oh geez, that must have been so hard, you know, living in a tent with a 1-year-old. Like, it sounds like torture for some people or something, you know, that piece. There's the majority of people will just be like, no, sorry, like, I'm out. But the fact that
Yeah,
you've
of
done
course.
what you've done, and we're gonna like get to do the little, because people, you know, watching this probably don't realize that you're actually sitting in the other structure that you ended up building, and we'll do a little tour of that. But like, that's what it takes, man. It takes fucking hard work, dude. And like, hard, it doesn't mean it's like, and I'm sure there were moments when you wanted to run away or like break down, or definitely, but hard work is like, is so cool, man. Like, just hands on in whatever form. It doesn't mean like not everyone is going to be building
specifically
things,
building,
but
yeah.
just doing whatever it is that you do and like committing to that. So yeah, I just like you're in it, you know, and you're creating your own path, and there's no time wasted. That's not the way I see it, and I'm sure you don't see it as that as well. You know, you don't look back and be like,
No, for
oh,
sure.
if only we did it like that. Like it was
But
always
this
going to
is the
be.
this is the commentary that I get from the outside world. I mean, the people who we were living on their plot thought we were like kind of out there. Like we go to them and say like, yeah, no, we just finished. Now we're going to start taking it apart. Like they're like, oh, okay, cool. But so yeah,
That's
I
how
think
anything great has been done, man. That's how
I love failure. I love failure.
you have to.
It's you just have to go for it and totally laugh at yourself when things fall to pieces in front of you and you don't know how that happened, and then you can try and kind of reassemble it all, but you got to laugh at it first lying on the floor. But like
after you've cried and broken down, then laugh, or maybe it happens simultaneously. I don't know.
I think it's simultaneous, but I think in general, in terms of a creator and a person who creates things, a maker, it's definitely key within the system is like you have to be unattached. Attachment to your objects that you are creating causes poor thinking, causes poor like imagination. Like you're too attached. You can't see past your attachment. And in terms of creating my creative process, I like to have this initial kind of like exploratory, open, dreaming kind of state, and you move towards kind of an analytical, quantified kind of space, and then towards the end, it's kind of like you just close it all down and you let go of it, and it is what it is. If it's finished, it's finished. If it's not, it's not. You've just got to let it go and be able to kind of essentially burn that thing in your mind, like not, and then you can revisit it after a couple of months. But like in general, for me, for my creative process, I feel like I need to just witness the birth and then like accept the death in a way.
Totally. Yeah, for sure, man.
That's really powerful for my process. But yeah, so we built this house and we put it up, got robbed, realized that things were like not as it seems maybe, and started this kind of journey towards how do we salvage what we have, because we had put in so much effort into kind of like building these systems that couldn't come with us anymore. And so that kind of led us onto the tiny house movement. Just to speak a bit about that, maybe it's been going on in Europe for a long time, probably about 10 years now, and in America for a little bit less, but probably like 8 years now. People have been building tiny houses and stuff, and so we got into the regulations and what we could do in terms of a mobile structure. What is the maximum size we could transport on the South African roads? And started to think from there, really. Like the inspiration came from the tiny house movement for sure, but it all made sense. Like it all made sense within our context and our needs.
Totally. And I mean, isn't it also, again, this is just the archaeologist in me, like, obviously
archaeologist and the architect. It's a great combination. You're gonna have to lead me a little bit then in terms of 100,000 years from now.
Yeah, totally. So I mean, wouldn't you say it's old? Obviously the tiny house movement as it is, sure, but like kind of caravan style. And I mean, most people are going to think of like a literal caravan, and like maybe some kind of weird Scooby-Doo image pops into your mind. But didn't they have a caravan?
They had a Volkswagen kind of like like van,
But actually the word caravan, I'm going to get this wrong, but I'm almost sure it's kind of right. I think it originates from Arabic.
Mm.
I think so. Oh, man, I might be wrong, but anyway, but basically
It was
nomadic.
a group of camels. Yeah, a group of nomadic tented, like dwelling people
Yeah,
moving through the desert.
hunter
Um,
gatherers. You know.
one of the more beautiful quotes that I ever read, I can't remember where it was from, but the guy considered these people moving over the desert, and in their language and in their experience of it, it's not that they are moving over the desert; it is that the desert is moving below them. So they are stationary, and the landscape is so similar, is
Yeah,
so constant. It's just sand. It's just sand
totally,
always.
totally.
And
And
so
they are
wherever
the
you put
center.
your tent,
Like,
exactly.
yeah, I like that.
Wherever you put your tent, that's the land hasn't moved. Or you
Mm,
haven't moved. The land has moved. You know.
mm, 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 mm. I like it. I think it actually might be a Berber or Tuareg word. I don't know. Anyway, I could Google it now, but I'm not going to. So, um, so you guys see this, and you've built the structure. Um, before we get onto the tiny house completely, but I'm sure that it kind of was all happening
Mm.
simultaneously. When did the idea come
Mm.
uh, for that house that you built? Because that's also kind of mobile. Now you can break it
Mm.
down and put it in a container
Mm.
and like ship it anywhere or transport it anywhere.
Yeah. So I based it. Yeah, it's like a double-story structure with a 6 meter by 6 meter roof. So it's quite a massive thing, actually.
Yeah,
It's like 8 meters up the roof. So it's tall and
yeah,
big. And it has these 6 meter gun poles that kind of do this. And then you have this roof. And the idea basically came from a tent. So the whole thing can basically like fall over unless it's got wires holding it to the ground to keep it up vertical when you first
right,
put it up.
right.
So most people build the house, they build the foundation, and then they build the walls, and they put the windows and the doors in, and then they put a roof on, right? We just
Uh-huh.
went like roof, and then like kind of lived within that structure until we had built some walls, basically.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm. And
and
that's
so
something you
yeah,
designed as well. You completely designed that.
yeah, it was quite a push factor that time because I mean we were working, so I was full-time job, full-time family, and then
Yeah.
we had about 2 weeks to shift from our current kind of like where we were paying and living and moving over to this. So we had like 1 month to make the transition from
Dude,
decisions,
you are
basically.
some other kind of human being. I swear, it's like I don't. It's why it's so kiff. Okay, so and
And
so I
so
mean, you're
we
working because
were
this is the thing, right? You having to make an income in order
no, we
to.
did this all on our income. Like we had support
Yeah.
from our parents and stuff, but 90% of it all came from our own income. And
Which was you.
also through a startup and then another startup. So like it was like full on, like to make money for this month was a real need, and there was no one else. We weren't going to get a salary for that matter, you know what I mean?
No.
Like we had to generate that income.
So you said two startups, but which Journeyman Collective is your company, right? Or
Yeah, so first off, the company was named Rainmakers Collective, and I was partners with Dave Robbie and John Robbie, who have the steel workshop still in Silverton, and they had their business running alongside that, which was the main workshop, right? So things just got a bit complicated after a year or two. If someone's got a big company, they've got a lot of prerogative there, and they have to feed that guy
sure.
more than anything. And so the small sub company constantly got sucked into trying to feed this bigger company, which like I'm still very good friends with them, and everything went very like amicably. We talked about it, and we were open throughout the whole process. And at a stage, I just said, "Man, this is too complicated for me to try and like to make decisions for my company. I have to advantage your other company, and I think it would be better if there are two small companies working together or multiple small companies working together, where it becomes this need for one big company to balance their books, then things
Mm-hmm.
become a bit complicated. I wouldn't say
Sure.
impossible, but yeah.
Sure.
So I just basically, we split the partnership and we split the intellectual property. They kept what I'd been working on with them, and I kept what I'd been working on with them. You know what I mean? We had
Yeah,
two
sure,
kind of
sure.
different pathways in the kind of growing of the business anyway. So yeah, that's the basic story. And then I started the new company, Journeyman Collective,
Okay.
with the view in trying to still work with many other small companies, artists, and that's hence the collective. Yeah.
And what's the inspiration between journeyman? Like the name, the phrase?
Journeyman is a traveling artisan in training. It comes from Europe, I think, and kind of the woodworkers slash steel workers of the time would get trained by a master, and then once they reached a certain level of skill, then they would leave that master and start to travel amongst the other kind of skilled laborers in their trades, and start to learn, and that way passing skills amongst many people within the country.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
journeyman, yeah, it's kind of like leading, kind of trying to point towards that kind of sense that we are all in this journey exploring our skills, like.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you've done and are doing.
Yeah,
and
it fit quite well.
yeah, so there's this accumulation of skills and experience, and so the income is coming to support, like, from this work that you're doing, while you're creating that reality of the pack away house, and then the tiny house. So when did the idea come of, like, oh wait, we can actually break this thing down and, like, literally pack it up and transport it? Was that there from the beginning, or?
From the beginning. From the beginning, we had that in mind. I like the main structure with the roof. That's very easy to take down. It takes less than a day. But what happened was that we got a bit elaborate in terms of, like, we found a whole lot of we got a whole lot of found materials from the family that we were living with. One of the other brothers, James, he sold us all of this beautiful kiat wood. And so then we had all of a sudden all these, like, big old window frames, and, like, big old, like, literally, like, can't even lift up a door frame myself. That's how big it is. And we ended up using all of that stuff in the house just because it was across the road in storage. So it was kind of like unexpected that would happen. And so it was the cheapest and best way that we could use our money. So we were just, like, kind of like freestyling with it, and we freestyled the whole exterior of the house, right? Boom, we, like, put it in place and stood back, and we're like, it's not as transportable as we thought it would be in this form.
Yeah.
But so that kind of was the failing, I guess, in terms of that design. I think it was too ambitious in the first place, like getting off the ground, getting double story, all of that kind of becomes a bit less mobile,
Yeah,
less and less
sure.
mobile.
Sure.
But yeah, so from the beginning we had that in mind, and I think if I had to redo this project one more time, it would be quite practical even to still do that. So I've learned a lot from the process and what is actually mobile and what isn't actually mobile.
Yeah.
But yeah, so in essence, we were staying with some friends of ours. They're from the Netherlands, Gert and Callahan, and we were just playing around with ideas, and he had this idea of a clamp around a gum pole. And within 2 weeks, we had the whole design for the house, and we're ordering material and stuff. So we had offcuts in the steel workshop. So we had, like, they were cutting door faces off of a sheet, and they had this, like, L-shaped offcut. So we had, like, all of these L-shaped offcuts that we could fit little pieces on. And so we cut all of these little pieces out of the steel and went to site, put up the gum poles with, like, I thought I was going to build it in a day. I was like, everyone, let's organize a party. Let's just build this thing in a day. And we didn't even dig we ended up having to dig holes and stuff and like we just had this party of digging holes basically.
That's classic.
And so over about 2 months, the whole structure came up. I designed this beam out of steel, which failed. Classic. Totally didn't work. It like was all floppy in the air, but I went through the effort of getting it up into the air and bolting it in place just to see it like kind of like be all wobbly and stuff.
Yes.
And then we took that beam down and bought a new beam, like out of really staunch timber, laminated pine beam, and we put that big guy up there. And then we hooked the roofs on and like pivot the roofs out. And then we've got this big roof structure. And then we started putting in the floor, bottom floor, top floor. Wow. And all of a sudden we had 50 square meters of space, which was a big improvement from the camper van.
Yeah.
We went from like 2 square meters to 50 square meters. We were like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
But I think the parallel story, I mean, the architecture is one story, but the parallel story is that we were working on composting toilets. We were understanding compost for the first time. We were starting to use our urine in the compost and starting to get good ways to dispose of our urine. Like that was one of the issues that we faced, is like in the beginning, we didn't know that urine is nitrogen, pure nitrogen, basically.
Wow.
And if you use it in combination with carbon, it makes really good soil. But we were constantly like just not knowing what to do with this incredibly stinky urine, because if you leave it for like 2 days,
Jaydon, you just flush it down the toilet, don't you know that?
And we're next to a river, so we don't want to like leach stuff into the river. And we're trying to do this like kind of in a conscious way. So all of that's happening in the background, and it eventually it's second nature. Like we can get a pile of organic matter to 65 degrees Celsius in like pretty constant manner now. Like it's not really difficult anymore. You know what I mean? Like in the beginning, it was so difficult. It took us like a year to get the first culture kind of composting well. And so all of that, like trying to figure out sanitation and food production, like starting to plant stuff with no idea. Like I lived in suburbia all my life, and now we're trying to plant food in the garden, and nothing grew. I couldn't get anything to grow, like it felt impossible. Like it really felt like this impossible task. Like I felt totally out of depth. There was no signs of things getting easier. Like moving gas bottles around, like like just the physical effort of the day, like carrying big buckets of water to try and like go and bath the kids,
but that's why you're so Hulk-like. People can maybe see through the video now, you're quite a large specimen, but you can just see like your hands and your feet. You're just like, I am here to lift things. Right?
Yeah, I don't think it's every human's kind of like path, but it's interesting in the sense that I have seen people in other situations, like single moms, doing all of this stuff just in a much less physical way, in a much more like brains kind of way.
Sure. Just tell me, Jay, quickly, are you getting any scratchy sounds through the mic? Or was it through mine? My voice, not yours.
I think so. There's a little bit of scratchy sound.
I hope it hasn't been too bad. Has it been irritating, like while you're listening?
No, it's quite quiet. No, it's quite quiet in the background.
Okay. So now, so the house, which you call the Sky Kaya.
Now it's called the Sky Kaya. Yeah.
And we'll have to like insert some photos or something for people to see. Cool. But then and then you were getting onto the tiny house, so you guys were inspired by the idea. And then like, what was the first like big move towards making that happen?
Just taking the leap, just getting out there. Like we literally just drove from Joburg in the camper van, and it was Dita's parents' camper van, and just parked it there. Found a good spot underneath the trees near the river, parked it there, and Dita moved in. And we started trying to get everything going. Like, it was very lush when we arrived. It was interesting. Like, when we arrived, it was beautiful, tall grass and everything. For the next 4 years, there was like drought in South Africa. I don't know if you
Wow.
remember that.
Sure, yeah.
And so everything turned to dust, almost like sand.
Wow.
Yeah, the growth was very minimal. And I mean, we caused a bit of disturbance when we were building, and that took like 3 years to recover.
Yeah, see.
Just watching that and trying to understand what's going on there. And yeah, we had very sandy soil, so it was literally like beach sand. Like
Yeah, I mean, I remember going there.
nutrients.
It's not like where you are now, you know. It's very different.
Yeah. But I actually found it easier to work in the sand than in the clay. Clays are very difficult in the sense that they're so much more dense. Sand is quite easy. The life can easily move its way through it and incorporate it into the humus.
Right.
So yeah. So just to get the timeline right. So we were like in 2018, we decided to build the tiny house.
Okay.
After we had been there since about 2015. So yeah, then we started to build the tiny house.
There's obviously some compost outside.
And yeah, it was literally direct. We would take a plank off of the old house, walk over, and put it on the new house. Like,
right.
So I planned this. That was part of the difficulty of it. Is again, we were living in the spaces that we were building, so we could never just say, "Okay, we're just going to tear off that wall and we'll live with it through winter." You know, like we were like, "Okay, we've got to start beginning of winter, build this whole structure, so that by next winter we can move into it, and that before the rains we can protect it."
Yeah.
So like all of those kinds of things you have to factor in and like be like, okay, can I do this in a week? Can I physically do that in a week while I'm busy having a full-time job, you know? Like
yeah. And now Rain has been born as well.
Yeah. So Rain was born in 2017 in the first house. Right. So we had a home birth in the first house.
Yeah. And I know
now.
We keep interjecting. I hope people don't mind, but I feel like this is a cool way to flow the conversation. I had Rome on in the last podcast, and we spoke about what he kind of calls empowered parenting and conscious fatherhood. And he was talking about their 2 home births. And I had Lucy Draper Clark on the first podcast, who was
she was our doula for Noah's birth.
Yeah. And it's just like, dude, Rome was saying his son now, who's also Noah, it was 54 hours.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah. That sounds about right. Just like, what do you mean? Like, it blew my mind that the conversation with Rome, and obviously chatting with you guys while we were there, but just like, you guys are doing something that most people are not doing. And I love it. Obviously it's what I feel is.
I find it absolutely essential, that experience of becoming a father, like being in the room for those many hours. I think Dita was 36 hours of labor, not active labor. That's like beginnings of labor pains and moving through those motions, but not sleeping for 36 hours at least. And just unbelievable. Yeah. Like just to see what it takes to birth a human. And then as a father, to hold that space, to be able to make sure that all the decisions are being made, with your consent, because everything's moving at such a pace. Like, do we want this? Do we want that? Especially in the first birth, we were in this place called Genesis Clinic, in Joburg.
Yeah.
And it's a very good place, very good thing. I have a lot of good to say about it. But our midwife in Noah's birth was a little bit more hasty, I would say, and things were moving too quickly. And at a stage, Dieter got muscle relaxants, and it was very difficult to manage that situation because I'm not a doctor, you know what I mean?
Sure, yeah.
Whereas in the second experience, the midwife was so chilled and like just so in control of her emotions, which was amazing. Like, yeah, I was going to catch rain.
Wow.
So, yeah, people can just speak you through this, can just say, hey, this is how you catch a baby. While your wife is in labor, someone can just speak you through it. Just say, hey, this is how it's going to go. This is what you're going to do. And you know, you can do it, go for it. And then
Incredible.
there were some complications and things got a bit longer. And then eventually I was behind Dieter holding her up when she actually gave birth. Okay. So I didn't actually catch rain, but you know what I mean? Like if things go smoothly, it's so easy. It's so easy. And I say it didn't go smoothly in the sense that it took a bit longer. It's not like she had to go to hospital, get a C-section. Like I think the society has a bit of a strange concept of empowering, women's power in general. Like, no, you have to have a C-section. And so many doctors say this, like constantly, like, no, you're too small to give birth. You're too
Dude, we've been doing it
issues
for 300,000 years, you know, like,
yeah.
And I know,
and if we do stop doing that, if we do stop birthing naturally, then it is irreversible. We will not be able to do that. Like, so turkeys, like the birds, turkeys. Literally, if humans have to go extinct, the chances that turkeys will go extinct with us is massive because we've bred them to a point where they cannot mount each other without crushing each other. So literally like 99% of all turkeys are artificially inseminated by humans.
Classic humans, hey? What a bunch of champions we are.
But that gives you this idea of like how quickly we can have an effect on a species. I think we don't have this, like, the fact that humanity as a whole does not have 100-year plan, never mind 1,000 or 10,000 year plan, is shocking. Like,
totally.
We have no goal. It's like we have all these like technocratic like frivolities. Like we want to just like get something fun out of it, I guess. But in the sense of like actually achieving something, we have no goal.
And I see the, obviously my mom had a C-section for me, I wasn't.
Me too, yeah.
And I see the vulnerability and the fear around, and of course, when we look at history, yes, lots of women and children died through the birthing process, but lots of people also lived. We're here, and we can learn about it and how to make it safer. And
I'm totally not against an emergency C-section. Like that's cool. Like I'm totally cool with that. I'm not cool with people like scheduling it, like without any issue. They want to have control over it.
And what I asked Rome, and he wasn't too sure. I mean, he gave a pretty general answer, which is probably pretty accurate. But I was like, is it not an expensive procedure? And like, so there's money being made, or am I being too negative?
South Africa is one of the biggest percentage of C-sections in the world, I think. Like, it's normal and okay for doctors to prescribe a C-section in South Africa for no reason at all.
And is it like an extra expense? I don't know. I'm like completely.
I think so.
Oh,
interesting. I've never. My kids were all born naturally, so I don't know
exactly.
But definitely, there's hospital time. I mean, they sever the woman's abdomen basically, like all of your like abs are cut through, like
Yeah. Yeah.
so you literally can't sit up out of bed after you've given a C-section.
Yeah. Yeah. And never
Like,
mind
yeah, and then you go into
all the
that whole,
drugs and everything else that goes with it.
for sure. But then you just get into that first experience for the mother. Like, imagine the first time you get your baby in your arms, you're finished, like you're cut open, like, and it feels like someone's punched you in the stomach a couple of hundred times.
Yeah.
Like,
With a knife.
with a knife. Yeah. I don't,
Dude, it's
yeah,
very
I
traumatic,
think
man.
it's very important, that moment, you know, like that moment with the mother and the child for the first couple
Totally,
of
dude.
days. Like they say, before that fontanelle closes
Mm.
on the top of our head, there's like a whole lot of like ancient traditions. Just to note one, like the American Indians, they would have the wife and the man go off into a tent, and the tribe was not allowed to go there. They just gave the guy a knife and told him to go birth his kids, you know. And so after the birth, they would get a signal, you know, the family would be like, the dad would be like, yeah, everything went all right. And the family would be like, yay, from a distance, you know, they wouldn't go, and they would
Wow.
just bring them food. But for 40 days after birth, they leave the mother and the father alone. And that is the time it takes for the fontanelle to close. So that's like
Yeah,
kind of protecting the space in a
totally,
way.
dude. And you bringing, like, I just realized in this conversation now again, and in the last one, it's like you're bringing a human into the world, you know, like that's a very underrated thing. I like,
Totally.
people don't talk about it enough. We don't get educated about it. We don't, unless you kind of purposefully seek it for yourself. We don't reflect on that. Like, what was my own birthing process? What did,
And
and it's,
traditionally, men are supposed to be excluded from it, you know, like in a Western world.
right. Yeah.
You're supposed to
And
be in the other room, like waiting for this great news, you know?
it's just like, dude, you bringing this child, like, I think if all of this was taken with it's not taken, not seriously, but if this was done with a bit more awareness and a bit more love, like maybe, like
Mm.
maybe maybe there would be more awareness and love,
Mm.
just all round, because it's just a critical moment, I think.
Yeah, that's definitely formative. Like, I don't think, like when Noah was born, I started to think in this way, like, I should definitely go around to all of the family members and introduce my son to all of the family members. You know, it's my job to do that, to go and, you know, like put my baby in my father's hands and be like, connection, here's some connection, you know, please connect with this child.
Mm.
And for everyone in that matter, like, that's kind of their right into the world in a way, is like this connection with everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And so the whole kind of like birthing process led into this bigger process of you know, bringing this child to the world in a way, and specifically our world, our close world, and everyone who's connected to them, you know.
Yeah.
Like, if you can start that relationship up in that moment, it's going to last a lifetime. Like, that's the power of it. This human connection that we have. And
Sure.
I think that's also an aspect that we don't connect with really. Like, yeah, I think there used to be this village that was introduced to this child, you know. Now there's like the mom and the dad and maybe the grandparents, and that's it, you know.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and maybe the aunts and the uncles, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that's playing a key role in our thinking and our motivation in terms of these kids, is trying to get them in a position where they can have a backup, have a group of people to have their backs when things go wrong or when they are in need. Like, there's this thing in society where we all feel we're alone and independent of each other.
Yeah.
And we
Massively.
all have to compete with each other in terms of the Earth's resources. Like, oh my God, I've got this little patch of sun. You get out of here, man. You can't have any of this. This is my piece of sun. Like, it's totally like that. It feels like we're in competition with 8 billion other people. Like,
Yeah. 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 Totally, man. Well, well, what you guys are doing is hopefully providing, like we said, this is another way, another possibility. So to jump back on the story there. So you're basically breaking down the one house to build the structure that you're in now, and that takes quite a bit of time.
yeah,
Um,
well, we started a little bit earlier in the sense of we didn't design it in 2 weeks this time. We took a little bit of the time, like it was maybe 2 months that we were like. So at the end of the summer of 2017, we started to think, okay, well, I think we got robbed in. So like January 2017, we were like hurting a little bit and trying to figure out. And then by the beginning of winter, we had already made plans enough to start the construction.
mm,
And so I went with my little blue bucky, my little Nissan 1400, and went and bought big pieces of steel on the roof, drove it to my friend's steel workshop and cut it into the right lengths and welded it together to make the chassis of the house. And in the trip, it dented the roof of my 1400. I was like, oh man.
just by the way, is the gonging in the background is the old house, right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So because I can
Yeah,
see
you can hear that.
the breeze, the wind is picked up a bit, so I can.
Yeah.
For those who are
I'll
listening
tell
and
you guys
watching,
what's going on out there in a minute. Yeah.
you're hearing dong dong dong, and that's the structure of the old house. Because it's
I
because
hung it
what
up.
did you do? You sprayed?
Yeah.
Did you paint it again, or?
Yeah, they all got a bit rust damaged in the last assembly because it was just primered and it was getting UV, and primer isn't so great with UV. But basically, yeah, I had to respray everything, all of the steel parts of the old house. So I've hung them up on my slack line or on a line. And I've got all of these little pieces of steel. And when the wind picks up, they start hitting each other.
Yeah, it's
It's been
cool.
raining over the last couple of weeks. So it's been difficult to find time for drying time. Like if I
Mm,
spray it and it rains, it's a problem. Like,
mm.
but yeah, it is blowing quite a bit now.
Okay, so you started, so you build, you see the tiny house idea, you guys are going for it. You've already built this other structure, so you've got some experience. But this is a slightly different thing. I mean,
Hmm.
what you're sitting on and in now is on wheels. If people don't
Hmm.
really know, and it is something that you kind of have to see to believe. So maybe actually now's a good time. Look, well, let's
Okay.
just do it because,
Okay.
um,
We're busy talking about it.
yeah. So you're building it. Then I saw it. That's when I saw it, and then you guys have got this vision of living this life that is in communion with nature, with a sense of community,
Hmm.
um, and to kind of be mobile.
Hmm.
And is that a leaf that just fell through?
As a flower.
Oh wow! There we go. Cheapers messages from above. Um, and you lockdown happens, and so you get out to the
Hmm.
farm, and then that kind of accelerated you in finishing this whole thing.
So yeah, we had gone through this process, and I kind of saw um, coronavirus and how it was starting to show signs of like I'm not a doomsday kind of guy, but I'm quite connected with kind of world happenings and trying to just I'm always questioning like worldview. Like I'm trying to understand my worldview in context with the world and trying to plan for my children's future, right? As a father. And
Mm,
so like I've got my like kind of finger on the pulse of the thing, and I see things are starting to heat up. Like China's not really holding it together anymore. They're starting to get cases all over the world. By January, I mean, there were like cases in like 50 countries or something.
mm, mm.
And so South Africa was just like, it was going to happen at some stage. So I
Yeah.
was seeing lockdown coming. I was seeing all of these things coming. So I kind of accelerated through December into January and started to like really take effort in and taking time off work to try and take down the old house. And a week before lockdown, I had everything down. I had finally taken everything down, and I borrowed a trailer from a friend, and I put everything on a trailer. And literally a week before lockdown, I rolled out of that space that we had been in for 5 years.
Mm.
So it was very like kind of this momentous moment. Okay, finally, like we've come full circle on the first house at least. And it was a bit sad because we had to leave the tiny house behind. Like we had to make some hard decisions. So
Wow.
we took what we had and that we knew we could work on, and to, you know, that was the continued work, was to take this house now over to a new space and still get the value out of it. You know, still, it's not going to just get thrown into a dump. We can't just throw it into a dump. So we have to try and like keep that momentum of that material's purpose. You know, it's been designed to fit in a certain way, so we have to continue that. And so we brought it here, and a week later, my wife Dita and the kids were in Verlorenkleef, which is not far from here. So they were on holiday for a week during that week before lockdown, and then as lockdown hit, I had made it this side, which was also like the stressful moment because I knew my family was like in a different province and stuff, and I knew that things were kind of like be shut down and people couldn't move very soon. So I was in the stressful mode of like trying to like rush things to get them done, but also keeping in mind that I'm going to just drop everything in a moment's notice if I have to, and just like mission out to try and get to my family, you know?
Yeah.
Because that would be terrible to get like separated from your family, right? That's the worst kind of thing that you can possibly imagine.
Sure.
As a father or
yeah,
as a
totally,
partner.
man.
Like, so yeah, and then we arrived here, and yeah, we've been here for 7 months. That was 7 months ago. So
So you packed up the other house, which is gonging in the background, and then you put it on a trailer, you brought it out, but then you went back and got the tiny house.
Yeah. So then we realized that we could move around a bit in terms of relocating to Watervalboven.
Okay.
So we realized that we could get, that was one of the permits that they issued, was relocation. If you said you were relocating to a different province, you were allowed to cross provincial borders, which a lot of people I think used maliciously, but we were literally relocating.
Literally, yeah.
So yeah, we drove three trips to Pretoria and back during level 5 and level 4 and level 3. And so about 2.5 months ago, we brought the tiny house, kind of rolled onto this piece of land, maybe 3 months ago.
Oh wow. Okay, so it was sitting for quite a while at the
definitely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we were living in so this farm is owned by friends. It's called Tegwan Country Getaway. Shout out. It's a very beautiful place. And
this podcast is sponsored by Tegwan Country Getaway. Get away for a weekend where you can stay in Deaton Jaydon's tiny house. Book on Airbnb now.
Yeah, for sure. So we moved into the house with them, like longtime friends. We've been friends since we met when our children were 5 months old. And so we were like, and in that whole kind of 5 years, they had moved away from their place in Joburg and moved onto this farm. And they'd been living on this farm for less than like 7 months. And yeah, also same journey, trying to move away from
the man,
typical living. Let's call it typical living, kind of like what we're dealt with in terms of a capitalist society, neoliberalist society, where people don't tell you that you have these freedoms, and they moved away from Joburg and bought this beautiful place in Watervalboven, about 34 hectares, with natural springs and all kinds of beautiful things, big trees. And so they were here. They were here during the beginning of lockdown, and so we were planning on being here for a week. It just turned out to be 7 months. You know? But they lovingly welcomed us into their house, and our kids have been living together in the same house for 7 months now. And there was another family, Julie and James, and Cole and Jordan. So there were 7 adults and 6 kids. So there were 13 of us during lockdown in the same
Just
household.
enough to start a cult.
Jeez, man, with that many kids, you need something to balance those kids out. Wow, 7 kids and 6 kids in one house is like intense.
I'm sure. For sure.
But it was fun.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the background of the farm, and the movements during lockdown, getting our house here. And yeah, there were like 4 months when we had like this livable space just standing empty in Donkerhoek in Pretoria, and not knowing if it's going to get robbed or like destroyed or like get burnt down because a veld fire like flies through there.
See, bro. Yeah.
Like, there's so many different things that could have happened.
I'm very glad that did not happen.
Yeah. But that motivated us to, because at that point it was not mobile. It was not, the wheels weren't like well connected. It wasn't like, it hadn't been on the road yet. Part of the issue was that we built it on the other side of a river. So like we couldn't cross the bridge to get over to the road side of the river. So we literally had to like cut down the fence and like drive out into the veld to get the house to the road. So when we left the piece of land that we were on, we would never be able to get back. Basically, that's what it came down to. So it was like all these factors that kind of like built this picture of how we could move this structure. And so first off, it would have to go 4x4ing through the veld. Classic South African style, you know?
Yeah,
and
as you do.
Yeah, so it took me about a week. I went back and I spent a week during, I think, level 4 lockdown in Pretoria, just like running around doing stuff, trying to get this thing into the space that it could move, and all of our kind of like assets into order so that the people don't feel like we're just leaving this like mess in their space. We've always tried to be respectful, and yeah, we planted many trees and all kinds of stuff. Like that's part of the journey, is like connecting with the landowners and trying to help educate them in terms of the like development and stuff. And yeah, just trying to work with their aspirations and plant a tree or two, you know. But yeah, so that relationship is very good, and it ended very well. Not ended, but like, yeah, closed that chapter very well.
Sure.
And so, yeah, loosened the end of the electric fence, like kind of sagged the electric fence and drove the house over the electric fence and into the veld. And like all of these pictures are up on our Instagram page. Our tiny house is called the Tiny Journey Home.
Yeah.
The Tiny Journey Home. So it's funny. There's actually, I connected with Rome shortly after your last podcast with him. He
cool.
messaged me yesterday and said, "Hey, I don't think it's a coincidence that that you popped into my podcast."
No, totally. Yeah.
And so he was like, "Yeah, I'm really keen on this." But literally on one of his posts on Instagram, I see it says the journey home. So he's had the exact same like kind of like inspiration in a way.
Yeah, dude, he's a champion, man, and also, you know, got 2 little ones, quite a bit younger than yours. But
how's this wind sounding on the?
No, all good. Can't hear it. Okay. No. Okay. And he's, man, like me, you know, just trying to like figuring out another way, you know, of living. And so when I told him that you guys are, you know, going to the green school and are going to be down there, he was super stoked. So I'm sure we'll all hang out and do things together very soon.
Awesome. Yeah, I think you're creating community, man. It's really awesome that you're doing this, and like kind of just starting to think in this kind of like flexible way of like, how can this work and how can that work, and
totally,
how do these people fit together? And like, I think it's very organic, how it's all unfolding for you. It's very
Mm.
beautiful.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it's like I don't know. You know, like you said, we get so, it can get so lonely, and we can get so alone, and like think we're the only ones. And like, also find is a big thing with South Africans. I've seen it in myself, of course, of like looking outwards, you know, like, oh, look what they're doing in Europe, and oh, look what's happening in Bali, and oh, look what's happening in the States, and oh, I went to Peru, and there are these people living on the, you know, and it's like, there's people who are doing amazing things here, man, and have been for a long time. And we just, there's just a way of connecting the dots in certain ways. And I think Corona has just accelerated that for most people who are just like, cool, I'm like done with this thing, and I don't mind fucking living in a tent for whatever, and I'm gonna work hard, because I'd rather do that, and like, I'd rather have the blood, sweat, and tears of like my own creation than the blood, sweat, and tears of someone else's, you know. And I think people are craving that, man. People are craving life and like connection, and and working for like yourself.
Purpose,
Yeah, and yeah,
purpose as well.
and
Like,
yeah, definitely.
like people are just getting this context now of like climate, like the globe, like we are all on the same sphere in space. And like, so like before they didn't connect with that. I think
Totally.
pre 2000s people weren't really connecting with that, and slowly through the 2000s is built. But from about 2015, or from my perspective, things started to accelerate, and people usually started to have the term climate change on their agendas, and like
Sure.
extinction, and like all of this stuff that's going
Yeah,
on.
totally, man.
And up until this point, now it's really starting to like become front and center. Nobody can look away now. Nobody can like just close their eyes and put on their blinkers anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's driving a massive move towards contextualization, people having the sense of purpose. Maybe if they were missing it, now there's no way to miss it. Like you can see that the purpose of our species initially is survival, right? Like every other life form that has previously existed has been just trying to survive. Lichen can do it very well. I mean, it's been around for like what, like 3.5 billion years or something, and not that much, maybe 2.5. But yeah, lichen
You
has been
know.
around for a long time, and all it's been doing is like staying alive.
Yeah.
It doesn't want to control the earth. It doesn't want to like, doesn't have any like huge ambitions. Like I think that's one of the things to be said about all species that have done well on earth, is that they have been the more successful ones are less complex and
Yeah.
less ambitious in a way.
Sure. Sure. They just do what they got to do.
They yeah, I think this sense of purpose for a lichen is to exist. It's not trying to be anything other than what it is. It just is. And I think humanity is totally out of touch with that. Like, why we are running around trying to find purpose in the universe. Like, in essence, we are a purpose in and of ourselves. Like we exist. Holy shit. Like, that's quite a thing. Like, let's just start there for the beginning, and then we can work from there. Like, if we carry on the way we're going, then we're not going to exist, and that's it. It's not like the universe will be like, oh my god, these poor humans are gone. No, it's just going to be like,
carry on. Yeah, man. Exactly, dude. It's you know, we're beings, and I think we've just become obsessed with doing, and like, I just feel like that has to be the common ground, that like, we're on the planet, you know. But for a lot of people, that isn't the common ground. That's not what they believe, which is, for me, is just ludicrous. I like, I'm sorry, I can't entertain that kind of thinking, because I'm like, we're dying, we're killing one another, and we're killing the planet. Like, we need to do something about it. It's our common ground. You drink water, you breathe air, you eat food. Stop denying those facts as if, you know.
I don't know how many of us are denying. I mean, I think there's a whole lot of misrepresentation of humanity at the moment. I think it's the biggest thing that's going on at the moment. We spoke slightly yesterday just on this topic of like Trump and Biden. Like, Trump is getting quite a lot of votes, and people are like, oh my God, we thought this was impossible. And I think that just points towards maybe the kind of hold that media has on people to sway their thinking. Like, I don't think that America in general has this kind of like a nihilistic point of view of existence. Or at least I hope not. I can't see it. I can't see any human being that is like seeing life happen, that is at least a father or a mother, or like, you know, that has some kind of connection with the cycle of life, making those choices to say, I don't care about the future generations or any of that. Like, I just can't see a human being do that. It's like contrary to evolution, like in general, or maybe not necessarily evolution, but existence, you know?
Yeah, maybe it's that, and this is why I say I feel like a lot of my life sometimes feels very contradictory, and I want that to change. And maybe it's just that a lot of the time our actions don't match our intentions. So like, oh yeah, I want my child to do well, but you know, it's happening at the expense of da 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 da. And it's like, this is where things need to change, you know, because even this is the strange thing with like belief in some ways, is that some people, you know, even like extreme fundamentalists, you know, fundamentalists in terms of religion, you know, who might create, you know, suicide bombers, do it because they think they are serving God. So it's for this kind of like, it's for this idea of love and service, and like, oh, this is like, so deep inside there is this
good intention,
but it's like also like, oof, that's
no,
some,
for sure. I think in large, we've lost connection with the survivalism. I don't know if you ever read the book Life of Pi.
Yeah, and my brother actually read it to me when I was younger. It's very lucky.
Wow.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
But I was very young, and
book.
so maybe I missed the deeper layers. So, but I watched the movie, obviously, which was exceptional.
In the beginning, he's quite in tune with like religion, and he's like asking all of these questions, like of like, why can't I be like part of all of these religions? Why can't I experience my spirituality in all of these different ways? And he's like questioning all of these things. But the moment that his life kind of falls apart and the boat sinks and he's left on this little dinghy with these animals, he stops speaking out. Like, that disappears from the book. There is no like religious contemplation during this time. So in essence, what I got from that is this like theme of like survivalism. Once you're in the survival situation, all of this like kind of like fluff of humanity just like peels away, and you're like, hello.
Dude, you hit the nail on the head, man. And it's such a nice way to actually bring the conversation back around to something I wanted to say earlier, is that we are too comfortable. Like, we get too comfortable. It's too easy to be numb, to be pacified, to have everything done for you. You know, everything's packaged, everything's pre-made, everything's pre-cooked, and like, a lot of people, including myself, get stuck and lost in that. And then you've got so much time to think and contemplate and wonder. And I'm just looking at your situation of like putting yourself right in it and being like, cool, I need to make it happen. And it's such a powerful creative space to be in. And you actually don't have time for negative thinking. You don't have time to be like, oh, woe is me, I'm depressed, because you're like, okay,
No, well, you can definitely be depressed. I mean, you're never going to make that feeling disappear, right? You're going to have a day where you wake up and you're like, oh, I'm depressed. But you've got all of these things that you have to do and that connect you to the cycle of life. That by the end of the day, you're feeling a little better. Like,
sure.
But like, yeah, if you feed the chickens, you plant the plants, you flip the compost, you know, and you're feeling better. I'm just going to have to close the roof quick. It's busy raining. Maybe I should switch over and I can do it with you.
Let's do it, man. So for those who are listening on maybe Spotify or another podcast, you definitely go to YouTube and check this out, because this is going to be fun. Jaydon's going to do a little tour. It's going to be a very interactive one, because now it's raining, so he's got to close the roof of the tiny house. So I stayed here 2 weekends ago.
Okay.
I think we're good. There we go.
Okay. So let me just flip the screen around. Can you see well?
Yeah, we're good.
Should I turn off my other video?
No, it's cool. You can. It gives a little bit of perspective. You can keep it going.
So yeah, this is the space that I'm in at the moment. But the thing that's happening right now is that the roof is still open. Let me climb up here. Here's our ladder to get up into our space. And this is the roof of the kitchen, which is a deck. And this is the view from our bedroom. And our bed is over there, and that's our little cave. But this roof can pivot on these gas stays. So what I'm going to do now is just close it so that the rain doesn't rain in here.
Incredible. And this is all built by the very hands that are holding this phone. There we go.
There you go. We have a disaster like normal.
There's Dieter.
Some of the stuff was getting wet out there.
We're getting live action here.
There's where my wife is running down to the barn.
Oh, dude, this is like the greatest podcast of all time.
Yeah, so we're up in the mountains here in Waterfallboven, and it's beautiful. We parked in a quite wild spot here, and yeah, this is the lounge. You can see me seeing myself through the mirror, and yeah, this is where we hang out and do some stuff. And it's got a little cabinet there to hang clothes in. And this is where all of our clothes are kept, other than the hanging clothes. This little cabinet here that, yeah, this is where we keep all of our clothes when we're living in here. At the moment, it's all set up for Airbnb.
Right.
But yeah, so that's not a huge storage cabinet, but it's all in terms of our clothes.
Less is more.
And there's our base.
And that water is coming straight from the mountain, right?
Yeah, this is from a spring just up the road, just up the pathway. And there's a little gas geyser out the window there you can see. So we can get some hot water just off gas. And then this is our kitchen. The front door is right behind me. And we've got a gas stove in here so we can cook some of our food. And then we've kind of just installed this like really nice system of drawers so that everything is nice and neat. And I kept the bottom open because we're going to put boxes for storage underneath there. Like this chair easily slides underneath here. and stuff like that. All these space saving, awesome stuff.
So beautiful.
And that's our and yeah, it's a little camping fridge. In terms of keeping stuff cold, you don't need to keep stuff cold a lot when you have a vegetable garden keeping stuff alive. So
oh dude, show us the light switch there quickly.
this is the lighting system. It's just push switches that turn on the kind of like lights in the tiny house.
Beautiful.
And dim and go very bright.
Oh, you can dim it.
Oh, you guys didn't know?
I didn't know.
Now you know.
Oh wow. And that's all you've got your solar panels out in the back.
Yeah, I mean it's raining now, so let me do it this way. Maybe you can see them out there.
There we go. Yeah.
Some solar panels there.
Hammock.
Just
Ooh,
there.
geez, wow, it's really big.
Hammock. Yeah, I know. And I can just quickly show you underneath this couch here. Here's all of our batteries.
Wow.
And the power system kind of going through the wall there. Yeah, so it's all kind of based on weight and size and practicality. And we've got a number of plug points, like there's one there, and there's one near the table where I was sitting. There's one there by the fridge, and then there's one underneath here in the kitchen.
And like all the little details, like those tiles and I mean, look at the wood. It's just so beautiful, man.
Yeah, and it's quite robust. Like, I mean, it's already been outside for quite a number of years. This is the kiat that we salvaged, and also in the front of the cabinets here.
Wow.
Is all the kiat. But basically, yeah, that wood must be at least 60 years old because it comes from an elevator high rise in a building that has multiple stories. So it was basically the decorative wood on the inside of the elevator.
Yeah, I see.
And so of the elevator lobby, sorry. So we had a friend that tore all of that wood out, and so we put all of that wood to good use here.
And then,
but yeah, very unique, very old.
Yeah,
I don't know if we're going to be able to do this tour now, man. It's busy raining pretty hard.
So Jay, maybe just because people might still not be clear of what's going on here. Just show outside the window so people understand that this is on a trailer and can be moved.
Well, okay. I'm gonna step out into the rain. I might get
wet. Just maybe just show through the window there. You don't even have to go out. Just through there, the front one.
The front one.
Yeah, to show the hitch, the tow hitch. There we go. There we go.
Yeah. So yeah, this is a house on wheels with a tow hitch. Can just be hooked up at any moment.
And then you could, and then that the way the water system works as well with like maybe you can show out that window by the sink.
Cool. Yeah. So yeah, the sink steps out into this bin basically that has a worm farm in it, but then that kind of drains into a grease trap, which is basically just a barrel with water in it that would separate out the grease that comes down your drain. So the worms kind of catch all of the little bits like the rice and stuff like that, and then the grease trap catches all of the grease, like the oils that come out of your cooking. And then after that, it's safe to kind of go into a reed bed or something like that, back into nature.
Nice.
So that's like directly from the basin, just straight out the floor into that box out there.
Right. Oh man, so very, very
so
cool.
Like,
the future.
If you've dealt with if you've dealt with kind of like the needs of the household, yeah, it gets very difficult. Let me keep it landscape. Gets very difficult sometimes, like dealing with that water
is actually quite difficult. Like it can smell really bad in a really short space of time from the basin. Yeah.
Sure. Well, thanks for that tour, Jay. Let's head back to the main.
Okay.
I think you can close it there on the phone. Little bonus tour, and just unmute yourself there. So, dude,
Cool.
thank you for that. That was like.
Let me just turn up now I can hear you again.
That was a vision of the future.
I wish I could have shown outside, but it's raining.
Yeah, it is beautiful to see. But we'll share some photos and stuff people can see. And so I guess the a nice way to maybe close it is like, where to from here? What's the next step?
So our kids are enrolled in a school in Cape Town called Green School, and we're really, my wife Dita has been following the school for a long time, and she actually went over to Bali and went and spent some time at that school, the original school. It's called Green School Bali, and they have such a great vision in terms of trying to deal with this future that we're not really ready for. They're trying to create entrepreneurial skills that kind of hinge around sustainable business. So it's beautiful, like that the kids are from grade 1 learning how to start a business and run a business. Wow. And how and then being kind of these driving forces to get things moving in a sustainable direction. Yeah.
Wow. And I mean, so do they have their own curriculum entirely, or is it kind of like, it's like a new and kind of alternative thing to Waldorf, or like what's the?
There's some overlaps, but I think it's a new curriculum from like, I think it takes elements from the better curriculums out there, and a lot of it is based, like my kids haven't been going to the school yet, and I think the South African curriculum was built specifically for South Africa now. It's not just the same curriculum from Bali that's being implemented here. And just by the way, there's another school being built in New Zealand at the same time. So both these schools are going to come online next year and become part of this group of schools now.
Wow.
It's an international curriculum. So your kids can go from this school to the one in Bali to the one in New Zealand, potentially, you know?
Wow.
So.
And they're wanting to go all the way to high school, like that?
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely all the way to high school. When you do your final exam, you basically, you build your own project, basically. Like the kids, for instance, in Bali, the one matric group built a biobus, so a bus that ran on biofuel. So like they converted a bus, right? They didn't build a bus. They converted a bus to biofuel. And yeah, so that's what you do in matric, is you kind of like lead this project on a sustainable outcome. The one kid did a step that generates electricity when you walk on it. So like when you're walking up the stairs, it's capturing all of that energy.
Dude, so cool. There's hope.
Yeah,
there's hope.
I think this is what we're after. Is we're after a sense that our kids have some kind of preparation for what's coming. Like, and that's obviously a matter of opinion, but from my perspective, like, we've been in this very kind of heart space of the earth. Like it's been very calm through this last 10,000 years. And in general, earth is not really that soft on most species. So yeah, things are bound to get a little bit more survivalist, let's say, maybe in the next 100 years or so. Sure. At some point. And I think that's part of what I see as what humanity needs to push them a little bit, is something. I think the coronavirus was one of the best things that could have happened, as maybe say opposed to an asteroid hitting New York and like vaporizing it, you know, like
It's
like
subtle. It's a little bit more subtle.
it's exactly like it. We didn't get the dinosaur asteroid. You know what I mean? Like we got
Yeah.
something that said, "Hey guys, you really need to just try a little harder."
Yeah. Yeah. Totally, man. I hear you and
So
feel
yeah,
you.
we're heading towards that school, and that's in between Parle and Franschhoek. And we've just 2 days ago been in contact with someone who owns a farm there, and they're very willing to have us there. And it wasn't very difficult to find a place to park the tiny house. Peter's been kind of like working on it, but we're literally going to be 10 minutes away from the school, in up against the mountain, up against the nature reserve, with the running
Wow.
river on the property as well.
Wow.
So trying to find these spaces.
Very exciting, dude. We definitely gonna visit you. That's for sure. And like we discussed, for me, like to work with you and whatever way going forward is exciting. So yeah.
Likewise, man. I'm really keen to figure out a way for kind of like a bit of a movement, like a bit of a cultural kind of experience around tiny houses and stuff. So music and movement and all of it is part of it, and growing food and
yeah, dude. Totally, man. I'm in. I'm gonna be knocking on your door. So yeah, dude, there's so many other questions and things I know we could explore, but it's probably a nice way to wrap it up.
For sure. This has been
and
awesome.
yeah, dude, just thank you for your time, your input, your energy, your information, your experience and stories.
Thanks for doing this podcast, man.
Yeah, dude, we'll keep in touch, and yeah, just lots of love, and I'm super grateful, and enjoy the rain.
Thanks. Yeah, it's raining quite heavily now.
All right, brother. Thank you.
Keep well. Cheers, Dave.